On my 65th birthday, my daughter took me out for a meal before I moved in with her and her husband. I wore my best sweater and even did my hair, but instead of cake and laughter, I received a suitcase full of old clothes and was abandoned at a nursing home. People still believe that a mother's love asks for nothing in return, that it's always generous, enduring, and never runs dry. I believed I had lived that way. Every scraped knee, every sleepless night, every school play, I was there for Clarissa, my only child. But lately, Clarissa hadn't been calling much, saying she was busy with work, that her relationship was stressful. But surely she would come. Today is my birthday. I woke up early. I took out my favorite tablecloth, the one with the embroidered light blue daisies, the one I only used for truly special occasions. I made a small chocolate cake last night. Nothing fancy, but I added a little peanut butter, like when Clarissa was little. On the table were 2 cream china plates and 2 stretched glasses that I had saved up to buy long ago. I told myself, today might be the day Clarissa tells me about moving in with her. My daughter said she had something important to discuss. Maybe she wants me to move to New York so she can take care of me. Who knows, maybe today is a new beginning. I chose the navy blue sweater that always made me feel confident. It wasn't new anymore, but it was still beautiful. I brushed my hair, put on a touch of light lipstick, and sprayed a light mist of my old perfume, not too strong, just enough to make me feel like myself. I sat down to wait. 10 a.m. Clarissa said she'd be here then, but I didn't see a notification. I was startled, wondering if something had happened to her. By noon, I was still alone. My heart sank a little, but I wouldn't allow myself to fall apart. I checked my phone dozens of times, rereading old messages just to feel a little connection. At 2 p.m., a car stopped outside. I went out onto the balcony. Clarissa got out expensive coat, large handbag, expensive high heels. In her hand was a bouquet of white chrysanthemums, already starting to wilt. No hug, no kiss on the cheek. She just put the bouquet on the table and said, "Mom, let's go. I made a reservation at La Meridian. They have your favorite French food." I nodded. I quickly blew out the candles, put the cake in the refrigerator. I took the wool scarf Clarissa knitted in 9th grade. It was old, but still warm. In the car, there was no music. Clarissa didn't say much. We passed familiar streets, then started turning onto unfamiliar roads. No more of the old bookstore liked to visit. No more of the small park where Clarissa learned to ride her bike. I asked, "This isn't the way to downtown." She replied curtly, "The other road is jammed. This way is faster." I turned to look out the window. Unfamiliar houses passed by like in a movie. A small wave began to rise in my heart, which I tried to suppress. Then the car turned onto Willow Creek Drive. A sign appeared. Willow Creek Private Nursing Home for Seniors. I was stunned. My heart was beating so hard I thought I could hear it. Clarissa stopped the car, not saying anything. She got out, opened the trunk, and pulled out the silver suitcase, the suitcase I kept carefully under the bed. I asked, my voice trembling, "Clarissa, where are we?" She turned to me, her eyes as cold as ice. "Mom, we need to talk. It's not safe for you to live alone anymore. You live alone, and your memory is failing." "Failing about what?" I snapped. She continued, "I've found a wonderful place. Safe, comfortable. You'll have friends your own age. Fun activities." Two laughed, a bitter laugh that didn't sound like laughter at all. "Are you kidding? This is the important thing you wanted to talk to me about." She cleared her throat. "Let's go inside." I wouldn't budge. I stared at her, numb. "You've been going through my things." She sighed. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be." My hand clutched my purse tightly. Inside, I still kept a photo of Clarissa at 4 years old, smiling broadly in my arms, her birthday hat slightly askew. I remembered, when I gave birth to her, the pain was suffocating. But when I heard her cry, I forgot everything. Once, she had a fever all night, and I sat by her bed, wiping away every drop of sweat, murmuring prayers. Now, I was sitting here, alone, on my birthday, with a pain even heavier than childbirth, being abandoned by the very child I had saved. Clarissa had signed legal power of attorney papers. The signature wasn't mine. When I asked the staff at the front desk, he said, "Your daughter has taken care of everything. According to the paperwork, she has full authority to make all decisions for you." I took out my phone. No signal. I opened the phone. The SIM card had been removed. Inside, I felt like time had stopped. Vacant. Smiling faces. The smell of disinfectant and overcooked vegetables. Clarissa stood in the doorway of the room, holding a blister pack of pills. She glanced at me for a second, her eyes flickered as if to say something, then stopped. A fleeting hesitation appeared on her face, but it was quickly replaced by her familiar coldness. I sat on the bed, still wearing my blue sweater. Still holding the old scarf on the table was the wilted bouquet. I looked at it, then looked at myself in the mirror. I understood perhaps in her eyes. I was like that bouquet, old, cumbersome, worthless. I used to be a paramedic. I used to cross the snow alone to save people left on the side of the road. Broken ribs, shallow breaths. I had saved many lives, in circumstances worse than this room. Now, I was being thrown away by the very child I loved. I don't remember how long I sat on the bed in my new room. It could have been minutes. It could have been hours. The feeling of time at Willow Creek was like the thin porridge they served in the afternoon. Watery, bland, without flavor. My room 214-. Every morning, a cold ray of sunlight crept in, but it wasn't enough to warm it. The cold here wasn't about the temperature. It was in the silence. In the sound of the nurses' heels tapping on the hallway floor, never stopping at my door. The nurses were mostly kind, but kindness can feel like a form of pity when you're trapped. They called me dear and sweetheart as if I were 5 or 10 years old. No one asked me what I used to do. No one asked me what I liked. To them, I was just another old woman in slippers, prone to forgetfulness. Every morning, a nurse would knock 3 times, not waiting for me to answer. A tray of pills was pushed in, 3 pills, 1 white, 1 yellow, 1 pale pink. Blood pressure medication and vitamins. You remember to take them all, okay? Then the door would close again. I used to be accustomed to knowing exactly what I was taking. In the emergency room, every medication I prescribed required a signed confirmation. But now, I held the blister pack and looked at it like a stranger. On Tuesday, I felt strange. I got out of bed and suddenly swayed. The room spun as if I had just run a marathon in the rain. I tried to remember what I had eaten, but my mind was as dense as cotton wool. I didn't tell anyone, just told myself it must be old age. But then the next morning, I couldn't remember the name of the cake I used to teach Clarissa to make when she was 12 years old. Impossible. I had never forgotten that. I rummaged through my suitcase. I knew there was a box of emergency medication I had brought with me, prescribed by my family doctor. I found it when I picked it up. I realized the packaging was different. The name of the medication was blurry, as if deliberately scratched off, but the numbers on the pills didn't match the ones I usually took. A premonition flared. I sat down on the bed with the blister pack, my palms clammy. I had seen cases like this before. In the hospital, some people had their medication switched by their children, just to prove their parents were no longer lucid, making it easier to put them under guardianship. I looked at the blister pack again. Then, as if by reflex, I put it in a sealed box, wrapped it in tissue paper, and hid it under the mattress. With the instinct of someone who had handled life and death situations, I knew it wasn't time to speak up yet. But I had to remember. Nighttime here was a series of repeated sounds, the ticking of the wall clock, the TV in the next room left on all night, and the snoring of old Mrs. Edith, my roommate. Edith was a woman who didn't talk much. During the day she slept. At night she sat silently looking out the door, as if waiting for someone to walk in and take her back to the past. I didn't dare ask, because I was waiting for something like that too. I started writing down what I remembered, on the back of a flyer advertising pain relief patches on the table. Writing in pencil, the handwriting firm but slightly shaky. Day 2, I feel dizzy. Insomnia. Missing letters when I try to remember. Could be the medication. Not old age. Writing to keep my mind sharp. To keep myself from dissolving into this monotonous, nameless, memoryless rhythm of life. I remembered Clarissa. About the times she came home crying because her husband had scolded her. I made tea, hugged her, and gave her an envelope with a few $100s, saying Mom is still here. About the times she promised, when I'm successful, I won't let you live alone. About the last time she asked for money, saying it was to invest in opening a store. I didn't ask questions. I just withdrew from my savings account. I no longer trusted Clarissa as before. Love doesn't always mean trust. I started paying more attention, recording what I ate when I took the medication, how I felt after each dose. I wanted to know what trap I was being led into. One night, I woke up startled in the middle of the whistling wind through the crack in the door. Edith was still sitting, her eyes fixed on the pale yellow light bulb on the ceiling. I couldn't fall back asleep. I took the scrap of paper and continued writing. Day 5. Clarissa may have switched medication. Cold behavior. Unusual. Needs further verification. Do not forget. I didn't know what I would do with this piece of paper, but I knew it was the last piece, keeping me from falling into the abyss of oblivion. I didn't like sitting in the common room at Willow Creek. The air there was always thick with the smell of plastic from the cheap, full leather chairs, and the jumbled noise of the TV turned up too loud, and the clatter of dice from the dominoes game. But that morning, I went in, not because I wanted to socialize, but because I needed natural light. The large window there was the only place that got full sun all morning. I chose a chair near the end of the room, far from the group playing bingo and away from the TV broadcasting the news that everyone had memorized from last week. As I sat down, I noticed an old, gaunt man was reading a book in the row of chairs nearby. He was different from the rest of Willow Creek, not dazed, not grumbling, not soulless. His silver hair, like platinum, was neatly trimmed. His eyes were sharp, even though they were sunken from old age. On his lap was an old leather-bound novel. No one spoke to him, and he didn't speak to anyone. I glanced at him again. There was something about this man that I couldn't take my eyes off of, not his appearance, but the familiar stillness. I hesitated, then said softly, "You know, there are memories you think you've locked away so carefully, but just one look, and they flood back as if it were yesterday." I smiled faintly, as if talking to myself. "I once saved a stranger in a snowy night," I whispered, not sure if he heard. 1995 Albany. I was on my way home when I saw a man lying on the side of the road. His face was bruised, his clothes torn, his ribs protruding through the fabric. I laughed lightly, bitterly. I should have called the police, but he begged me, said he was being hunted. I took him home, bandaged him, gave him soup, hid him in my cramped apartment for 2 weeks. Then one morning, he disappeared, leaving only a note with just one sentence. "Thank you, Curl. You're the only one who saw me." Without asking who I was, the old man slowly raised his head. He looked straight at me, an unmistakable look. "Penelope," he said. His voice was shaky but clear. "Albany, 1995. I was stunned. Almost 30 years had passed, but I recognized him immediately from that look of panic and gratitude that I had seen in the snowy night when I pulled him into my apartment, put him on the sofa, and trembled as I took off his blood-soaked coat. "Marcus," as I choked out. He nodded. "It's me." And in that moment, I knew some encounters are not coincidental. Sometimes, fate doesn't knock with a loud noise, but just touches gently, like a familiar look among hundreds of unfamiliar faces. There are people who pass through our lives once, then disappear, seemingly leaving nothing behind, until they return, bringing with them a part of the past we thought was sleeping. Meeting him again here, where I thought my life was ending, was like a reminder. Everything we have given away will eventually come back, even if it's late. It's never too late. We sat together in the corner of the room all that morning. He told me everything in a slow, weak but clear voice, like a final record of a person's life. Marcus Landon, his real name, an anonymous tech entrepreneur, famous for never appearing in the media for nearly 40 years. No children, no family. "After you saved me, I was able to continue living," he said. "I had temporary amnesia. You didn't ask anything. You just took care of me like a person, worthy of being alive. I didn't say anything. I just listened. You don't know how those 2 weeks changed me. I used to think the world was a place where the strong lived and the weak were buried. But you, a tired emergency room nurse, living in an apartment just big enough to turn around in, chose to save me without asking for anything in return." A week later, Marcus placed a small USB drive in my hand, wrapped in a blue-silver silk scarf. Inside is a recorded letter, "Just for you," and a copy of the photo you took of us. "Do you remember? The black and white one. You're smiling, holding a spoonful of soup, and I'm bandaged across the chest." I opened the scarf. The photo was here, faded, but I remembered. I remembered every detail. I looked at Marcus. He was breathing more heavily. "You don't know how many years I've been looking for you, but I did it." "Marcus," I whispered, Why give me this USB? He took my hand, squeezing it gently. Because you deserve it. You don't know this, but I've transferred all of my assets into a trust fund, in your name, not out of pity, but out of gratitude. I've been searching for you for decades just to give you this. I'm about to leave this world, Penelope, but I want the last person who believed in me to live as she deserves. I couldn't hold back the tears. You don't need to do that. It's not need, he whispered. It's what should be done. Marcus passed away a few weeks later, quietly, as he had lived. That evening, I went back to my room, closing the door softly so as not to wake Edith. I opened the USB. Inside was an audio file, Marcus's voice, weak, occasionally interrupted by coughing, but every word clear. Penelope, if you're hearing this, then I'm gone. But I'm going in peace, because I know you'll keep your promise. Not the promise spoken, but the promise of the heart, that you won't let yourself be forgotten, that you'll live true to your values. You gave me a life. Now it's time for me to give it back to you. Thank you. Girl with the eyes that know. Silence, I cried, for the first time since being left in this place, not because I was sad, but because someone still remembered who I was. I hugged the old photo, placed my hand on the blurred ink where I used to smile. I looked out the window. The moonlight shone on the white snow in the yard. Marcus believed in me, and I wouldn't let him down. 3 weeks had passed since Marcus's death, and each day, I felt the weight of the responsibility he had left me more clearly. The hundreds of millions of dollars in the trust fund weren't just money. They were an opportunity for me to reclaim the life that Clarissa had tried to steal. But first, I had to get out of here. I couldn't let Clarissa find me, not when she had already forged my signature and might be manipulating me with medication. I needed an ally, and Ruby, the young nurse with the warm smile, was my only hope. That morning, I waited until breakfast time, when the hallway was less crowded. I walked out to the common room, pretending to read an old newspaper, but my eyes were searching for Ruby. She appeared, pushing the food tray cart, her hair pulled back, her smile making the room a little less cold. I stood up, walked closer, whispering, "Ruby, I need to talk to you privately, please." Ruby looked at me, her eyes showing a hint of surprise, but she nodded. "Meet me in the break room after my shift, around 10 o'clock, she said, then continued her work as if nothing had happened. I returned to my chair, clutching the scrap of my diary in my pocket, feeling like I was stepping into a dangerous chess game. If Ruby didn't help, I didn't know what to do next. At 10 o'clock, I sneaked into the break room, a small room with an old wooden table and the smell of burnt coffee. Ruby was already there, wearing her nurse's jacket, her eyes curious but sincere. I closed the door, checked that no one was lurking around, then sat down, my voice trembling. "Ruby, I don't belong here. My daughter, Clarissa, she tricked me into this place, forged documents, and I think she's changing my medication to make me confused." I took the blister pack from my pocket and placed it on the table. "I need someone to help me check this, and I need to disappear." Ruby blinked, clearly shocked, but she didn't interrupt. I continued. "About Marcus, about the trust fund, and the USB drive. I have assets. But if Clarissa finds out, she won't." "Stop. I need a lawyer, someone trustworthy." Ruby took my hand, her voice firm. "Mrs. Penelope, I believe you. I know someone, Aaron, a volunteer lawyer. He helped the old lady in room 112. I'll contact him." 2 days later, Ruby arranged a secret meeting in the break room itself. Aaron walked in, a middle-aged man, with salt and pepper hair, sharp eyes but exuding trustworthiness. He wore a gray coat, carried a briefcase, and sat down opposite me. I took the USB drive and the photo from my pocket, pushed them across the table, whispering, "I need to disappear. This is a trust fund from an old friend, Marcus Landon. Hundreds of millions of dollars. I need to protect it, and I need to get out of here before my daughter finds out." Aaron listened, flipping through the recorded letter on a small laptop, his eyes never leaving mine. "Mrs. Harper," he said, his voice deep, "I will help you, but we have to act fast. Your daughter has signed a power of attorney. If you stay, you will lose everything." I nodded, my hand shaking, but not from fear, but because I felt like I was regaining control. Aaron made a plan in 3 days. He created a secret trust, transferred Marcus's assets into it, ensuring Clarissa couldn't touch them. He bought a small log cabin in Vermont, under the alias Ellen Carter, and amended my will, Completely excluding Clarissa from the estate, I signed the papers in the break room, under the dim light, my hand trembling as I put pen to paper. Each signature was a step to reclaiming my life. "Are you sure?" Aaron asked, his eyes serious. I looked at him, remembering Clarissa's cold eyes when she left me. "Sure," I said, my voice firmer than I thought. Aaron nodded, handing me a bus ticket and the address of the house. 4 o'clock tomorrow morning, Ruby will help you out. Don't bring anything but your handbag. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the bed, listening to Edith's snoring, hugging my small handbag, which contained the USB drive, the black and white photo, and the blister pack of pills. I looked at the photo, saw my smile 30 years ago, and remembered Marcus's words, "You gave me a life. Now I'm giving it back to you." Tears rolled down, but I wiped them away, replacing them with determination. Clarissa might have taken away my phone, my freedom, even my dignity, but she couldn't take away this will. I put on Ruby's coat, a thick gray sweater she had given me, and tucked the handbag into my chest. At 4 o'clock in the morning, Ruby knocked softly on the door, leading me through the dark hallway, avoiding the cameras. "Good luck, Mrs. Penelope," she whispered, her eyes shining. I hugged her, not saying anything, just hoping she understood. My gratitude. Snow was falling lightly as I stepped out the back door of Willow Creek, the cold wind cutting my skin, but I didn't feel cold. I walked to the bus station 2 blocks away, my feet gripping the slippery pavement. The bus arrived on time, its yellow lights dim in the darkness. I got on, sat near the window, hugging my handbag, my heart pounding. As the bus pulled away, Albany receded through the misty window. I watched the familiar buildings disappear, feeling both scared and free. The strangers on the bus, a man dozing off, a girl listening to music, didn't know who I was. Good, I thought, clutching the black and white photo in my pocket. I'm no longer room 214. I'm Penelope Harper, and I'm starting over. The bus ride lasted for hours, and when I arrived in Vermont, it was just dawning. Aaron had arranged a driver to take me to the small log cabin in the countryside, hidden among the pine trees. No cameras, no neighbors too close, just enough distance between me and the life I was leaving behind. I walked in, put down my handbag, and stood in front of the bathroom mirror. My long silver hair, which I had once been proud of, now seemed like a burden. I took scissors from the kitchen, cut my hair short, the strands falling to the floor. I looked at myself in the mirror, a new Penelope, no longer a victim. The new Penelope starts here, I told myself, my voice echoing in the quiet house. In the days that followed, I lived like a shadow. I cooked simple meals, walked to the mailbox, sat on the porch, wrapped in an old blanket, watching the wind blow dry leaves across the yard. I checked the news obsessively, half hoping my name would appear in bold letters. Missing woman inherits millions. Daughter claims mental instability. But there was nothing. Not yet. It had been a week since I escaped the nursing home, and each day, I felt Clarissa's danger more acutely. She might be looking for me, and Marcus's trust fund, hundreds of millions of dollars, was something I had to protect at all costs. But to do that, I needed to know the truth about what Clarissa had done. The blister pack of pills was the first clue, and I decided to start there. I took the new phone that Aaron, my lawyer, had sent, and called him. "Aaron, I need to get the blister pack tested, and I want to know what Clarissa is doing with my name," I said, my voice more confident than I felt. Aaron arranged to meet me at a small cafe in the town near my house, 15 minutes away on foot. The cafe was quiet, with a faint smell of toast, and Aaron was already sitting in the corner, a black coffee and a laptop in front of him. He pushed an envelope across the table. "Mrs. Penelope, this is what I found from public records. But first, give me the blister pack." I took it from my bag, placed it on the table, my heart pounding. Aaron looked at the label, frowning. "I'm not a pharmacist, but this doesn't look right. I know a pharmacist in Burlington, someone discreet. We'll check it right away." The next day, Aaron drove me to Burlington, to a small pharmacy tucked away behind the main street. The pharmacist, a middle-aged woman named Martha, examined the blister pack under the desk lamp. "This isn't blood pressure medication," she said, her voice serious. "This is a mild sedative, which can cause dizziness, disorientation, even memory loss if used for a long time." I clenched my fist, feeling like the floor was tilting. I remembered the dizzy spells in Albany, the moments I forgot the name of the street, and the video Clarissa filmed when she stood there, holding the phone. pretending to be worried. "Mom, are you okay?" I slammed the blister pack on the table, my eyes blazing. "She did it on purpose," I said, my voice choked. "She wanted me to look confused, to lock me up in Willow Creek forever." Martha looked at me, her eyes sympathetic, but I didn't need pity. I needed justice. One morning, the quiet of the small log cabin was broken by a soft knock on the door. I froze. I had never told anyone where I was. No bank cards in the name of Penelope Landon. No social media. No phone registered in my name. My heart pounded like a drum. I tiptoed to the window, carefully pulling back the curtain, a small crack, to look outside. It was just a delivery person, carrying the groceries that Aaron had scheduled in the weekly plan. Part of the plan for me to live anonymously. But the feeling of unease lingered. The feeling of being watched, being hunted, being remembered. But not for the good things. That afternoon, I couldn't stand it anymore. I opened the computer, created a fake Facebook account under the name Eleanor Beckett. I typed Clarissa Matthews into the search box, and just as I suspected, she was still there, a perfect smile in her profile picture, her hair neatly styled, her hand placed on her husband's shoulder, as if the world had never had a crack. In the most recent post, Clarissa wrote, "If anyone sees my mother, Penelope Landon, please contact me or the Albany police. She has been missing for several weeks, and we are really worried about her safety." Below were hundreds of comments, prayers, sharing messages. People called Clarissa a dutiful daughter, an angel. I laughed until tears streamed down my face. No one knew. Not a single person. But what made me choke up wasn't the lie. It was the photo Clarissa chose to post with the article. Not a recent photo, but a photo that was 7 years old, one of the last birthdays we celebrated together. Clarissa had her arm around my shoulder, her lips smiling. We looked happy. It's easy to create love in a photo. Just choose the right moment and the right lens. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in front of the fireplace in the living room, staring at the dying embers. Every thought in my head was like ash, swirling, then falling. I remembered every time Clarissa came to borrow money, every time she cried, saying her husband had scolded her, every time she promised to take me in. "Just give me this loan, Mom." I used to think I was getting old in a bad way. I used to blame myself. I used to be afraid that I was really confused. But no, she wanted me to doubt myself, so that when she controlled my life I wouldn't have the strength to resist. She wanted me to disappear. And now I had done just that, but not in the way she expected. The next morning, I called Aaron from a disposable phone he had given me earlier in case of emergency. "I want to update my will," I said, my voice strangely calm, even though my heart was boiling. Aaron didn't ask why, didn't ask what had changed. We had crossed the line of polite questions. "Make it clear," I said slowly. "Clarissa Matthews receives nothing. No money, no house, no heirlooms, not even a picture." "Understood," Aaron replied. "Everything will be reset. You're still safe, Penelope." I was silent, because I wasn't safe. Not really, because something was about to happen. It started with a seemingly harmless letter, slipping out of the pile of junk mail as if by chance. An envelope with no sender, no postmark, no printed logo. Just an ivory envelope, the paper a little thicker than usual, cold to the touch. I almost ignored it if it hadn't been for my intuition. I opened it and immediately, my fingers stiffened. Inside was just one piece of paper. It was a copy of a loan document, with a real bank logo, a notary seal, a signature, my name, Clarissa's name, and the name of my deceased husband, Benjamin Landon. The date on the document was 12 years ago. The content clearly stated, a personal loan in the name of my husband and me, to guarantee for our daughter, but I had never signed any such document. I knew it well, because I was the one who kept the family's original records for 3 decades. I collapsed into the armchair near the fireplace, the paper trembling in my hand. The signature looked so real that it gave me chills. Even the stroke in the P of my name was perfectly imitated. But something was wrong. Too round, too practiced. Benjamin would never sign without telling me, and Clarissa, she had never mentioned any loan. I opened the small safe that Aaron had helped me hide under the drawer. I took out a file, what was left of the old life, the papers we managed to collect before I left Albany. I flipped through each page, each item, and then I found 3 other contracts, All had my signature. And all I had never signed. A cold feeling crawled down my spine. Clarissa had been doing this for years. Suddenly, everything old began to connect. The times Benjamin was silent when I asked about finances. The arguments at night that I thought were due to work stress. The vacations that were suddenly cancelled. The unfortunate investments that I used to blame on old age or the volatility of the market. It was all her, Clarissa, the daughter I once held through her first fever, the one who used to study ballet, fall, and burst into tears for fear that her mother would no longer be in the audience. Now, she was the one behind every slide of my family. Without me knowing, I knew what I needed to do. I collected all the evidence, copies of the forged documents, the blister pack of sedatives, and a copy of the video Clarissa sent me via email before locking me up, in which I looked panicked. Falling into the chair, I wrote a short letter, unsigned. Investigate. Clarissa Harper, she is forging identities, abusing finances, and manipulating medical care. I put everything in a thick envelope, sealed it, and wrote the address of the Department of Justice. The next morning, I walked to the mailbox at the end of the road, snow falling lightly, the cold wind cutting my skin. I stood in front of the mailbox, clutching the envelope, feeling like I was throwing a bomb. I dropped it into the slot, heard the swish as the envelope fell, and turned back, my heart pounding but my steps steady. Arriving home, I found a new letter in the mailbox, with no sender's name. I opened it, and Clarissa's handwriting appeared. "Mom, I know you're hiding. Don't test my patience." I read it, and for the first time, I smiled, a cold smile, without a trace of fear. I put the letter in the iron box on the shelf, next to the photo of Marcus. "Come on, Clarissa," I told myself, my voice echoing in the quiet house. "Mom is ready." I sat down, opened the laptop Aaron sent, and began reviewing the documents. The Department of Justice would need time, but I didn't stop. I called Aaron, asking him to prepare for the possibility that Clarissa would sue me. I knew she wouldn't give up easily, and neither would I. A letter arrived from the county court in Dayton, official, certified. I signed for it with trembling hands and sat down to open it at the kitchen table. She had filed a petition to have me declared mentally incompetent. I couldn't breathe. The document included statements from two people claiming I had exhibited erratic and confused behavior over the past year. One was an old neighbor. The other was her old college friend whom I barely knew. Clarissa's lawyer had also submitted audio clips, excerpts from old voicemails I had left when I was distressed, lonely, or simply venting, cut and edited. They made me sound unwell, unstable. She even attached a letter from a psychiatrist, someone I had never met, expressing concern about my disappearance and delusional behavior. They wanted the court to freeze my accounts, seize control of the trust fund, drag me back. I felt as if the air had been punched out of my lungs. Clarissa presented first, her voice trembling, feigning worry. "My mother is no longer herself. She forgets everything, falls constantly. I just want to protect her." She played a video of me in the Albany apartment, dizzy, falling into the chair, my voice panicked. I clenched my fists, remembering that dizzy spell, and the sedative pills Martha had tested. The video was fabricated evidence, staged to destroy me. I saw the judge's eyes narrow slightly. A small movement, but I immediately recognized the suspicion that was beginning to take root. My hand tightened on the arm of the chair. My breath was even, but deep. I knew what was coming. Then Clarissa spoke. "Your Honor," her voice trembled slightly, just enough to make others think she was truly in pain. "I love my mother deeply, but I fear that someone is taking advantage of her. My mother has changed. She is no longer herself, and I fear that if we don't intervene, she will destroy herself." I stood up. My voice was calm, without resentment, but clear as a bell. "Your Honor, I would like to speak." The judge nodded, without speaking. I walked to the witness stand, not hurrying, not trembling. I wanted every step to make its mark on this room, where they once thought I wasn't lucid enough to walk alone. "My name is Penelope," I began. "I do not have dementia. I am not being manipulated by anyone, and I am certainly not lost." I opened the old leather briefcase that I had carefully cleaned every corner of. I took out a carefully clipped file and handed it to the court clerk to pass to the judge. "This is a psychological evaluation from Dr. Melinda Garrison, a neurologist, licensed to practice in Vermont and New York. Diagnosis: completely lucid, no signs of cognitive decline, psychologically stable." capable of making legal and financial decisions on her own. I saw a slight tremor from across the table. Clarissa's lawyer's shoulders stiffened, and Clarissa looked like she had just been tripped in a crowded street. I continued. I also brought, I said, raising a second file, copies of all the money transfer receipts into the legitimate trust fund in my name. The history of the calls I actively made before leaving Willow Creek, general medical records, and an affidavit from the lawyer who assisted me throughout the process, Mr. Aaron, confirming that I am completely sane and have the right to decide all my actions. I paused for a beat, and I also have another file, but I don't intend to use it, unless I'm forced to. I looked directly at Clarissa. She tried to keep her face cold, but I saw a flash of pallor behind the expensive lipstick. In my briefcase, there was still the file containing all the evidence, the documents with forged signatures, the reworked bank documents, the loan in the name of my deceased husband and me that I had never known about, and the altered tax returns, my trump card. But today, I didn't need to pull it out. I turned to the judge. Your Honor, Clarissa placed me in a nursing home without my consent. She disabled my phone, cut off communication, isolated me, and now, she wants to take what's left, my right to speak, my freedom, and my dignity. I took a deep breath. Please don't let her. The room fell silent. Not a whisper. No one dared to cough. I turned back to the lawyer's table. Aaron sat there, calm, not interrupting at all. We didn't need to discuss it beforehand, because he knew and I knew. I had been waiting for this moment all my life. The judge banged the gavel, announcing a 2-week adjournment to consider the matter. I left the courtroom, feeling the scrutinizing eyes of the public, but I stood up straight, whispering to myself, I haven't lost. Aaron drove me back to Vermont, and I thought things would calm down for a while. But that night, when I opened my laptop, I saw a post on social media, from an anonymous account but clearly Clarissa. She wrote, my mother, Penelope Harper, is seducing an old billionaire for money, abandoning her family. Attached were fake photos, me standing next to a strange man, clearly edited. The post spread quickly, hundreds of comments calling me a gold-digging old woman, a bad mother. I read, my heart aching, feeling like my honor was being trampled on. But what shocked me more was an interview on local TV. Clarissa appeared, her eyes red, pretending to cry. I just want my mother to be safe, but she's obsessed with money. I immediately recognized the falsehood. She wasn't really crying, just acting. Aaron called me right after, his voice urgent. Penelope, I found the emails. Clarissa hired an actor to be a witness in court, and she paid for this interview. She's playing dirty. I turned off the laptop, sat in the dark, my hand trembling with anger. Clarissa had not only betrayed me, she had made me a laughingstock before the whole world. She could pretend to play the dutiful daughter, spread dirt, but she didn't know I had sent the evidence to the Department of Justice. She thought she was in control, but she was wrong. I stood up, went to the fireplace, looked at the photo of Marcus. I remembered his eyes at Willow Creek, when he said I deserved to live happily. Clarissa had gone too far, and now it was my turn. I called Aaron, asking him to prepare a counterattack, find a way to expose the fake witness. I said, my voice hard, and I want to talk to the press. Tell the truth. Aaron agreed, promising to contact a trustworthy journalist. Clarissa wanted to destroy my reputation, but I wouldn't let her win. I picked up the phone, called Aaron, my voice more decisive than ever. Aaron, I want to use Marcus's trust fund to do the right thing. Transfer $5 million, anonymously, to an organization that protects the elderly. I want this money to awaken justice. Aaron worked quickly, contacting a reputable nonprofit organization, ensuring the donation couldn't be traced back to me. 2 days later, the news broke. Anonymous $5 million donation for elderly rights, shocks Albany. The articles praised the mysterious benefactor, and I sat in front of the fireplace, reading the headlines on my laptop, feeling like I was planting a seed. I didn't need anyone to know it was me, just that the world saw that goodness still existed, even as Clarissa tried to paint me as evil. Aaron called back, his voice excited. Penelope, everyone is talking about the money. This is an opportunity. I contacted Sarah, an independent journalist in Vermont. She wants to interview you, tell your story. I took a deep breath, knowing it was time to speak up. I met Sarah at a cafe. Sarah, a young woman with sharp eyes, placed a small camera on the table. Mrs. Penelope, tell me your story, she said, her voice sincere. I looked at the camera, my heart pounding, but I didn't tremble. I was tricked into a nursing home by my daughter, Clarissa Harper, I began, my voice shaky but strong. She forged my signature, switched my medication to sedatives to make me look confused, and took away my freedom. I told her about the birthday, the wilted bouquet, the suitcase in the trunk, but didn't mention Marcus or the trust fund. Was a secret I kept for him. When I finished, I looked straight into the camera. I am not a victim. I am a survivor. Sarah nodded, her eyes shining, and I knew my story had touched her. The interview was broadcast on a local news channel. Spreading quickly, the comments online began to change, from ridicule to sympathy. Penelope Harper is a victim of betrayal, one article said. I read, not smiling, not crying, just feeling a new strength. But I knew the real battle was still ahead. The second hearing, where Clarissa would make one last attempt to declare me mentally incompetent. Aaron and I prepared even more carefully, adding emails proving Clarissa hired an actor as a fake witness, and I brought my diary, the scribbled lines from Willow Creek, as a shield. On the day of the hearing, I walked into the Albany courtroom, wearing a gray coat, the watch ticking on my wrist. Clarissa was already there, still with her fake smile, but I saw she was more tense, her eyes darting around. The judge banged the gavel, and Clarissa presented, repeating the story of the confused mother. But this time, she lacked confidence. Aaron stood up, presented evidence of the fake witness, causing the public to murmur. Then, a man walked in. Tall, silver-haired, wearing a black suit. Harold Grayson, lawyer for Mr. Marcus Landon, he introduced, his voice echoing. I was stunned. I didn't know Marcus had a personal lawyer. Grayson presented to the court Marcus's recorded letter and the black and white photo, me smiling radiantly beside him in 1995. Mr. Landon left his estate to Mrs. Harper because she saved his life. Grayson said, this is not seduction, as the defendant alleges, but gratitude. Marcus's voice echoed in the courtroom, weak but clear. Penelope, you are the kindest person I have ever met. I looked at Clarissa, saw her turn pale, her hand clutching the chair, trying to refute, that's fake. But the judge interrupted, his voice stern. Silence. Ms. Harper, the public murmured, some reporters scribbling furiously. Aaron whispered beside me, Penelope, the Department of Justice has begun investigating Clarissa for fraud and defamation. She's finished. I looked at Clarissa, her eyes panicked, no longer fake. I didn't feel happy, just sad. You destroyed yourself, I thought, clutching the photo of Marcus in my coat pocket, feeling like he was protecting me from afar. The judge announced the rejection of Clarissa's request, affirming that I was lucid and free, and Clarissa no longer with her perfect red lipstick, no longer with her calculating smile. She sat motionless. When the lawyer beside her whispered something, she just nodded, without reacting. A few hours later, the prosecutor announced Clarissa Matthews would be criminally charged with abuse of guardianship, forgery, medical manipulation, and financial fraud. In total, she faced a maximum of 12 years in prison. Leaving the courthouse, the press was waiting. Microphones, cameras, flashes, flashing continuously. Clarissa couldn't hide anymore. A female reporter held out a microphone. Clarissa, did you switch your mother's medication to seize her assets? Clarissa turned away, not speaking. But her eyes were red, and her wrinkled designer coat could no longer hide the collapse. The news spread quickly. The husband, who was an executive at a small furniture company, filed for divorce that afternoon. Friends, who had once praised Clarissa on social media, silently unfriended her, deleted photos together. Suddenly, she was a stranger in the city that had once called her a model child. I didn't comment to the press, just quietly returned to Vermont, the small log cabin in the pine forest. In the evening, I sat by the fireplace again, placed a cup of hot tea beside me. I cried, not because Clarissa had failed, but because ... I had once been her whole world. I opened the drawer, rummaged through the old letters I had kept like treasures. A piece of paper folded in quarters, written in light purple crayon, Mom is my whole world. I promise to always love you, protect you as you have done with me. Clarissa, 3rd grade. I placed the paper on my lap, gently folded it again, carefully placed it in the small wooden box, then closed the lid. You forgot that, a long time ago, I whispered. Outside the porch, the snow was gradually melting. Individual drops of water slowly fell onto the wooden porch. I stood there, wearing a wool scarf, holding the still warm cup of tea. No more noise. No more people calling my name the wrong way. Just fresh air and true freedom. I gently closed my eyes. I won, but the price was high. It was a chilly Saturday morning. I walked into the small town center in Vermont, for the first time since my interview aired on local television. I didn't know what to expect, but what I didn't expect was the smiles. No one whispered behind my boff. No one looked at me with pity. They just smiled as sincerely as the sun shining through the thin clouds after a snowstorm. A woman in her 40s, wearing a hand-embroidered sweater, gently touched my arm as I was standing in line at the grocery store. "You gave my mother the courage to leave a bad place," she whispered. "You don't know it, but you changed her whole life." At the pharmacy, the young man behind the counter slipped a piece of paper into my bag of medicine. "My grandmother said thank you." He winked and turned away. I wasn't seeking attention, but it came as gently as the dew at the end of winter, not blinding me, just enough to warm me. That afternoon, Aaron stopped by. "They made a plea bargain offer," he said, sitting down at the kitchen table. 10 years in prison, if Clarissa pleads guilty. Otherwise, the case will go to trial." I was silent for a moment. "What about her?" I asked, trying to keep my voice from trembling. "She thinks she can outsmart the whole system," Aaron replied, his eyes tilting slightly. "But you and I both know, she has lived her whole life in her role." I nodded, not saying anything. The truth was, Clarissa had tried to contact me, not directly, but I received something. One evening, as I was washing dishes, an unsigned envelope was slipped under the door. I opened it, and inside was a photo. Me, wearing a yellow sweater, smiling radiantly next to my 60th birthday cake. On the back of the photo was a line, the handwriting so familiar it hurt. "You always believed in me." I'm sorry that wasn't enough. I sat with that photo for hours, not crying, not angry, just remembering the little girl who hugged her pillow asking for another bedtime story. Remembering the teenager who snuggled into my shoulder when her friends teased her. Remembering the woman who hugged me tightly the day my husband died. It was all Clarissa. And I had loved all those parts of her. But true love needs to be built on truth. Clarissa had chosen to lie. That night, I put the photo in the fireplace, not out of hatred, but because I needed to be free. I watched the flames lick the paper, blackening the edges of the photo, erasing the smiles. I didn't need the photo to remember. I needed peace. And I was close to touching it. The next morning, I returned to Willow Creek. The sky was gray, the characteristic pale gray of Vermont, not gloomy, but softening everything. I stood on the porch, in front of the very place where a few months ago I had been pushed in like an unclaimed piece of luggage. The parking lot was empty. The trees were bare, but something had changed. The door opened. Ruby came out, her hair pulled back, still wearing her old blouse, but her eyes shining. She stopped short when she saw me. "Oh my God, Penelope," I smiled. "It's me." We hugged, not politely, not awkwardly, but like two people who had survived something big. Ruby's arms were warm, and only then did I realize how long it had been since I had felt safe in someone's arms. "I've heard about the Penelope project," Ruby said softly, choked up. "And I know you haven't forgotten this place." I squeezed her hand lightly. "No, I never forgot." Inside, Willow Creek looked so different. The wooden floors were newly polished and gleaming. The lights were a soft yellow, no longer as cold as before. The common room now had bookshelves full of books, a large screen TV hanging neatly, and the smell of real coffee, the rich coffee I had dreamed of, was wafting from the corner of the room. Ruby took my hand, led me to a quiet bench in the hallway. "I've been following everything you've done," she said softly. "The interviews, the seminars, the donations. Penelope, you've changed this place." I shook my head, smiling slightly. "No, I just stopped letting others decide who I am." We walked together through the hallways. I visited the old room that had been the place where I was isolated. Now it had become a common reading room, with cushioned chairs, windows open to the sunlight. A few staff members looked up. Some smiled, some were a little surprised. Some residents recognized me, nodded hello, as if I had never left. For the first time, they were no longer invisible. And neither was I that afternoon. In the new common room, chairs were arranged in neat rows. A tray of fragrant, steaming cookies was prepared by the nurses. Ruby stepped up to introduce me. Her voice was full of pride, as if I were an honored guest, but I didn't want to be anyone other than myself. "I'm not here because I'm rich. I began, my voice ringing out clearly. I'm not here because I was treated unfairly either. I'm here because I was silenced, and I know many of you are still living in that silence. The room was silent. I just want to say one thing that I wish I had heard a long time ago. You are not a burden, you are not forgotten, and you are not over. A round of applause rang out, hesitant at first, then gradually rising like a wave. I smiled, feeling the burden from the lonely nights, the denied days, gradually disappear, replaced by something warm and complete. That evening, when I returned to the small house in Vermont, I completed the final paperwork for the Penelope project, which had now officially become a national organization protecting the rights of the elderly. We hired lawyers, set up hotlines, signed partnerships with care facilities and courts across the Northeast. The project wasn't named after me for fame. It was named after me, because of what I had been through. Clarissa accepted the sentence, 12 years in prison. Before being transferred to prison, she tried to send another letter. I received it, but I returned it, never opened. That chapter was closed, forever. I spent the last days of the year writing thank you notes to everyone who had stood by me. Aaron, Ruby. I didn't thank them for rescuing me. I knew they just stood beside me, and I was the one who saved myself. On the morning of the first snowfall of January, as the wind whistled softly through the window frame, I did something I hadn't dared to do in decades. I wrote a letter to myself, just one page, not lengthy. I read it aloud, sitting by the fireplace, while Ruby's cat that I had adopted was curled up at my feet. Dear Penelope, you are not crazy, you are not too trusting, and you are not weak. You are a woman who has loved too much, too deeply, and when they tried to write you out of your own story, you picked up the pen and rewrote the ending. I am proud of you, with all my love. You. I folded the letter, placed it in the small wooden box, then put it on the fireplace mantel, where the fire still burned steadily. I didn't need a legacy of money, didn't need revenge, didn't need recognition. I had something more precious than all of that, freedom. And for the first time in my life, I was truly free. Thank you for listening. And if this story touched your heart, please leave a comment to let me know you are still listening. And don't forget to subscribe so that every day we can meet again through an emotional, everyday story.